Welcome, my friend. The storm rages outside, but here, in the quiet of this story, I invite you to find peace. Let the sound of the rain and the distant thunder guide you as you drift into a place of calm. This story is my gift to you, a gentle companion for a night of restful sleep. Relax, let go of the day, and let the story carry you into dreams. The storm had been relentless for hours, the rain falling in heavy sheets that reduced visibility to near zero. I couldn't remember the last time I'd seen anything but the blur of wet pavement ahead. It was the kind of night where the road seemed endless, and the hum of the engine was the only sound that kept me company. I had been on this highway for what felt like days, my eyes heavy, my mind numb. There was nothing on the horizon, just an endless stretch of road. I glanced at my phone. No service. No surprise there. I was miles away from the nearest town, just as I was about to settle in for another stretch of solitude. Something caught my eye. A flicker of light in the distance. Faint but steady. A sign. Rest area. 5 miles. It was a welcome sight. I needed a break, just a few minutes to stretch my legs, grab a coffee, and get back on the road. I had no idea where I was, but I knew I didn't want to spend another minute on this stretch of empty highway. I turned off the road and drove down the narrow path toward the rest stop, my headlights barely cutting through the fog. The place was old, the kind of place you don't usually stop at, but after the hours of nothing, it seemed like a beacon of civilization. The rest area was nearly empty. A single truck was parked under the dim lights, but there were no other cars, no other drivers. I couldn't see anyone around. It was eerily quiet. I parked the truck, stepped out into the damp night air, and stretched my stiff legs. The fog had thickened, and I could barely see the end of the parking lot. The rest area had the kind of silence that made you uneasy, like something was wrong, but you couldn't put your finger on it. I walked inside the building, hoping to find at least a vending machine or something to drink. The door creaked as I entered, and I was greeted by the smell of old wood and stale air. The room was small, with a few benches and an old mirror hanging on the wall. It looked like it hadn't been cleaned in ages. I moved toward the counter, but the place was empty. No staff, just the sound of the rain outside. I decided to grab a drink from the machine in the corner, but as I passed by the mirror, something caught my eye. My reflection. It wasn't right. At first I thought it was just the dim light playing tricks. But no, there was something in the reflection. I didn't know what it was, but it was as if my face didn't match my movements. My reflection stayed still for a moment after I moved. It didn't move the way I did. I took a step back, my heart pounding in my chest. Then the reflection smiled. It wasn't my smile. The expression was wrong, twisted. And as I looked closer, I could see the darkness behind it, the emptiness in the eyes. I froze, staring at it, unable to move. I blinked, and the reflection moved again. It wasn't just standing there anymore. The version of me in the mirror reached out, its hand moving toward the glass, as if it were trying to touch me. I couldn't tear my eyes away from the reflection. It was no longer just a mirror. It felt like a window into something else, something dark, twisted, and alive. My breath hitched as the figure in the glass continued to move, its hand reaching forward, pressing against the cold surface. I stumbled back, my heart racing, but the figure, my reflection, didn't stop. It kept moving, mimicking my actions, but in an unnatural, distorted way. I wasn't imagining it. It was as if the reflection was controlling its own movements, separate from mine, mocking me. "Get a grip," I muttered under my breath, trying to shake off the panic that had begun to creep up on me. It was just a trick of the light, a figment of my tired mind. I had been on the road too long, too tired. My mind was playing tricks. I turned away, trying to ignore the mirror, but as I walked to the vending machine, I could still feel it, watching me. The air around me had grown heavy. Thick with a sense of unease. I reached for the machine and paused. The low hum of the lights above and the sound of the rain outside were the only things I could hear. But there was something else, a faint sound, barely audible at first, but growing louder, a whisper. My pulse quickened. I froze, my hand still hovering near the machine, but I didn't turn around. The whisper grew louder, more distinct. You can't escape. I didn't want to look. I didn't want to acknowledge what was happening, but my body moved on its own, turning to face the mirror again. The reflection was there, staring back at me, with those dark hollow eyes, the grin growing wider. I'm you, it whispered, its voice a distorted version of mine. It was like I was hearing my own thoughts twisted, warped, and echoed back at me. I stepped back, my heart hammering in my chest, and I finally did what I should have done the moment I saw the reflection. I turned and ran. I didn't care about the drink, about the mirror. I needed to get out of this place. Away from whatever was happening. But as I reached for the door, I heard the whisper again, closer, louder. Where will you go? You can't run from me. You are me. I turned around, my chest tight with fear. The reflection had moved again. This time, it was outside the mirror. It was standing behind me. It wasn't just a reflection anymore. It was there, in the room with me, its twisted smile, stretching wider, its eyes dark and empty. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think. It felt like the walls were closing in, the air suffocating me. My own reflection was standing behind me, and I didn't know how to escape it. I stumbled backward, my breath coming in short, frantic gasps as I tried to put as much distance as possible between myself and the thing. My reflection, that was now standing just inches from me. The air was cold, and the room felt smaller, like the walls were closing in, inch by inch. It was me. But it wasn't. The reflection in the mirror had become something else, something I couldn't recognize. Its eyes were too dark, too empty. Its grin, twisted and full of malice, stretching far beyond what a human face should be able to do. And then it spoke again. You'll never escape yourself, it hissed, its voice low and unsettling, as if it were speaking directly into my mind. You brought me here. You've always known I was waiting. I couldn't breathe. My pulse was racing, my head spinning. I turned around, looking for a way out, but the door was still there, and the reflection, it wasn't following me. It was here, behind me, with me. I rushed for the door, my hands shaking as I fumbled for the handle, but the moment my fingers brushed it, the air around me seemed to stiffen. It wasn't the kind of pressure you could feel physically. It was psychological. The entire room felt wrong. The silence that had once been comforting was now suffocating. I twisted the handle again, but the door wouldn't budge. My mind raced in panic. What was happening? Why wouldn't it open? Running won't work. You know, the reflection said, its voice cold and mocking. You're trapped in your own mind, trapped by your own fear. I spun around again, staring at the thing behind me. My reflection was still there, staring with that smile that seemed to consume its entire face. Its eyes locked with mine. And for a moment, I thought I saw something familiar. Not just my face, but me. A piece of me that I had buried for years. A fear I had tried to outrun. You can't outrun yourself, it repeated, taking a step closer, its grin widening even further. You can't hide from me anymore. We're the same, you and I. I could feel the panic rising in my chest. My body was betraying me. Unable to move fast enough to escape. My legs frozen in place. The room had grown darker, the air thicker, and the walls felt like they were closing in. I slammed my fists against the door. Bang, bang. But it didn't open. The room didn't change. Why are you doing this? I choked out, my voice breaking. Why now? The reflection didn't answer. It didn't need to. Its smile was enough. And then it took another step closer. I backed away, my hands pressed against the cold walls. But every direction I turned, there it was, staring at me. I couldn't escape. The room was suffocating me. My head felt light, like I wasn't even in control anymore. My reflection wasn't just a reflection. It was a part of me. A shadow of all the fears and regrets I had buried deep inside. You'll face the truth now, it whispered, its voice now inside my head, mingling with my thoughts. This is what happens when you try to run from who you are. I wasn't sure what was real anymore. Was I even awake? Was I trapped in some sort of nightmare? The storm outside was still roaring, but it felt like I was alone in an endless void. Just me and the reflection that was no longer just a mirror image. It was a presence. Something darker, more dangerous. And then an instant, the reflection reached out, its hand passing through the mirror. It moved closer, until I could feel its coldness on my skin, its grip tightening around my wrist. "You can't run away from me," it whispered, the words sending a shiver through me. "You never could." I tried to pull away, but the reflection's grip tightened, colder than anything I had ever felt. It was like ice was seeping into my bones, freezing me in place. The moment its fingers made contact with my skin, my entire body went rigid. My breath caught in my throat. The storm outside seemed to roar louder, the thunder shaking the ground beneath me. The figure in the mirror, my reflection, was no longer a mere image. It was alive, and it was pulling me toward it, as though it had become a part of me, a physical manifestation of all my worst fears and regrets. I yanked at my arm, but it was like trying to pull free from the grip of death itself. My hand was frozen in its grasp, and I could feel the icy chill creeping up my arm, tightening its hold on my mind. "You've been running from me for too long," the reflection hissed, its voice now a growl, echoing in my ears. "You've always known I was here. You've always known that we are the same." I fought against it, my legs shaking as I struggled to move, but the room felt like it was spinning. The walls were bending, closing in around me. The floor felt like it was giving way beneath my feet, as though I was falling into a black void. The figure's smile stretched wider, its eyes darker, deeper. "Face it," it whispered, its voice a cold, mocking lullaby. "You can't escape yourself. You're just as broken as I am." I wanted to scream, to break free, but I couldn't move. The reflection was everywhere, around me, in me, beneath me. I could feel it creeping into my mind, twisting my thoughts, feeding on my fear. It was suffocating me, drowning me in the darkness I had tried so hard to ignore. I could see myself in the mirror, but it wasn't me anymore. It was a version of me I didn't recognize. Broken, lost, consumed by the very fears I had tried to bury. I wasn't in control anymore. I was at the mercy of this thing, this reflection, this twisted mirror of my soul. "You can't run," it repeated. "You've already given up. You just don't know it yet." I felt my legs give out beneath me, and I collapsed to the ground, my chest tight with panic. The room was spinning, the air suffocating. My thoughts were a blur, and I could feel the reflection's voice, its presence, surrounding me. There was no escape, no way out. I couldn't keep fighting. The reflection had already won. I had been trapped inside my own mind all along. And then in that moment of realization, something shifted. The storm outside had faded. The thunder had quieted. The wind had died down. And with it, the reflection's grip loosened. The air, which had been suffocating moments ago, became still, almost peaceful. I looked up at the mirror one last time. The reflection wasn't smiling anymore. It was gone. The storm was still raging outside, but it no longer felt like a battle. It felt like an end. And I was finally free. The greatest battle you'll ever face is the one within yourself. Only when you confront your fears can you truly be free.